Welcome to my channel, where we take a deep dive into the past, sometimes for nostalgia, sometimes to question humanity's life choices. Today, we're serving up 10 vintage seafood dishes that have almost disappeared. These were the dishes that graced dinner tables back when seafood was fancy. Mayonnaise was a food group, and no one questioned why half their meals were suspended in gelatin. So, grab your bib because things are about to get fishy. 1. Devil crab.
Today, I am making devil crab, which has been one of my favorite crab recipes my whole life.
First up, devil crab. If crabs had nightmares, this would be it. Imagine being plucked from the ocean, cracked open, and then stuffed right back into your own shell like some kind of seafood zombie. But hey, at least it was delicious. This dish was a favorite among seafood lovers who enjoyed a spicy kick, as the crab meat was mixed with breadcrumbs, mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and just enough cayenne pepper to make your tongue do a double take. It was then baked until golden brown and crispy, creating a dish that was crunchy on the outside, tender on the inside, and so rich it could make a banker jealous. Served at dinner parties and seafood shacks alike, devil crab was both fancy and rustic, a rare combination that made it a true classic. Sadly, it's now a relic of the past, much like your great-uncle's obsession with suspenders. 2. Lobster Newburg.
Today we're gonna make Lobster Newburg. It's like a blast from the past in the 1980s.
Nothing screams old money like Lobster Newburg. This dish was for people who wanted to flex their wealth through seafood smothered in a luxurious, sherry-infused cream sauce. It was created in the late 1800s, when someone looked at a perfectly good lobster and thought, let's drown this in enough butter and alcohol to make it unrecognizable. The result? A ridiculously rich concoction of tender lobster meat simmered in a velvety blend of butter, cream, egg yolks, and brandy. The whole thing was then served over toast or in a pastry shell because, eating it straight from the pan just wasn't elegant enough. It was a dish designed to impress, whether you were dining in a grand hotel or trying to convince your dinner guests that you were fancier than you actually were. Sadly, Lobster Newburg has all but disappeared, likely because modern diets can't handle that much dairy and booze in one sitting. 3. Shad Roe with bacon.
Fresh roe, so we can show you how we clean one to make our cooking segment here on Wildfire.
All right, brace yourself. Shad Roe with bacon. If you're not familiar with Shad Roe, it's basically fish eggs, but not the tiny, fancy caviar kind. No, this was a massive, veiny, slightly unsettling sack of fish eggs that required a brave soul to cook and eat. But fear not, because bacon was here to save the day. The Shad Roe was gently pan-fried in butter until firm, then wrapped in crispy bacon to disguise the fact that you were eating something that looked like it came from an alien autopsy. Despite its odd appearance, it was actually considered a delicacy, with a rich, nutty flavor that seafood aficionados adored. It was a springtime favorite along the East Coast, served with a squeeze of lemon and a side of courage. These days, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone willing to try it, let alone cook it, but for those who remember, it was a true vintage classic. 4. Oyster Rockefeller.
Oysters Rockefeller, you've had them, but have you ever made them? I've got the perfect recipe.
Rich people loved oysters, and Oyster Rockefeller was the height of shellfish sophistication. This dish was invented in New Orleans in the late 1800s and was named after John D. Rockefeller because it was that rich. And no, not just in flavor. This dish was literally meant to scream, I have money. The oysters were baked in their shells, smothered in a thick, green, buttery sauce made with herbs, breadcrumbs, and just enough mystery ingredients to make you wonder if it was actually legal. The result? A creamy, decadent bite of seafood heaven that could convert even the most dedicated oyster hater. Served at high-end restaurants and dinner parties where people pretended to know about fine dining, Oyster Rockefeller was an icon. These days, it's been overshadowed by simpler oyster preparations, but back in the day, it was the dish to order if you wanted to impress your date. 5. Crab Imperial.
I've prepared the same crab imperial recipe for over 25 years. Guess what? I think this one's better. This, my friends, is Old Bay Crab Imperial.
If mayonnaise could vote, it would elect Crab Imperial as its official mascot. This dish was essentially a love letter to mayonnaise, because nothing says gourmet like drowning crab meat in a creamy, eggy sauce. Originating in the early 20th century, crab imperial was a simple yet indulgent dish made by mixing lump crab meat with mayo, mustard, Old Bay seasoning, and just enough breadcrumbs to pretend it was sophisticated. Then, it was baked until golden and bubbly, creating a dish that was rich, savory, and practically begging to be eaten with a spoon. It was a staple of mid-century fine dining, and was served in fancy restaurants where the waiters wore tuxedos and called you sir even if you were wearing flip-flops. These days, it has mostly disappeared from menus, probably because people realize that eating that much mayo in one sitting is a gamble. 6. Salmon mousse.
It's not a boring old plain garden salad. This is a beautiful smoked salmon pate.
Oh boy, salmon mousse. If you ever wanted to know what happens when someone gets too creative with a blender, here's your answer. This was peak 1960s dinner party food. Salmon pureed into a paste, mixed with cream and gelatin, because people back then couldn't resist making food jiggle and then mold it into a shape. Sometimes, it was a simple dome, but if the host was feeling extra fancy, it was molded into the shape of an actual fish, because nothing makes a dish more appetizing than reminding people what it used to be. Decorated with cucumber slices for elegance, this dish was either a retro delicacy or an abomination, depending on who you asked. 7. Stuffed flounder.
Here back with another recipe. Today we are making a crab stuffed flounder. Let's jump right in and get cooking.
Stuffed flounder, the dish that made fish eat other fish. This wasn't just your average baked fish fillet. It was flounder with a surprise inside. The surprise? Usually a decadent stuffing made of crab, shrimp, breadcrumbs, and just enough butter to make your doctor concerned. The flounder was then rolled up, baked to flaky perfection, and smothered in a rich, creamy sauce. Because apparently, fish alone just wasn't indulgent enough. If you were at a 1960s dinner party and this hit your plate, you knew your host was trying to impress. If it was drowning in hollandaise, you knew they really wanted to show off. This was seafood luxury, old school style, elegant, delicious, and guaranteed to make your taste buds do a victory dance. 8. Scalloped oysters.
Scalloped oysters, a super decadent, special occasion side dish.
If you loved oysters but hated effort, scalloped oysters was your go-to. Think of it as the fancy ancestor of the casserole. Layers of briny oysters, crushed saltine crackers, or Ritz, if your family was high class, and heavy cream, baked until it bubbled with golden, buttery goodness. It was a dish that looked deceptively simple, but was rich enough to make your arteries file a formal complaint. This dish was a staple at old-school holiday feasts, where someone's grandmother would proudly declare it was the best thing you'll ever eat, while everyone else side-eyed the gooey pile of seafood and crackers, wondering if they should risk it. But one bite in, and you were hooked. The salty, sweet oysters, the crunchy topping, the creamy, buttery decadence. It was a vintage comfort food masterpiece. Just don't ask about the calorie count. 9. Curried shrimp.
And today I'm going to be making some delicious curried shrimp. Curried shrimp in coconut milk.
Curried shrimp. The dish that made mid-century housewives feel like world travelers without ever leaving their beige, wallpapered kitchens. In the 1950s and 60s, people didn't have easy access to authentic international cuisine, so they did the next best thing. They took shrimp, drowned it in a mild, buttery curry sauce, and called it exotic. The curry itself wasn't exactly bold. This wasn't the kind of spice that made you sweat. It was the kind of spice that whispered, "I promise I won't offend your delicate suburban palate." The shrimps were plump, the sauce was creamy, and the whole thing was served over a mountain of rice because, apparently, every vintage dish needed a carb overload. If you really wanted to impress, you'd throw in a splash of sherry. Because what's a retro recipe without a questionable amount of alcohol? It was an elegant, easy-to-make dish that gave people the illusion of being adventurous without actually taking their taste buds too far from home. 10. Seafood thermidor.
Cooking a lobster thermidor. This is the perfect dish for any special occasion where you really want to bring the wow factor and impress your friends.
Finally, let's talk about seafood thermidor, the dish that basically puts seafood in a tuxedo and sent it to a black tie event. Originally a luxurious lobster dish, this creamy, wine-laced, cheese-covered masterpiece eventually welcomed shrimp, scallops, and anything else that came from the ocean and screamed, "I belong in a fancy ramekin." The preparation was pure decadence. First, the seafood was lightly cooked, then smothered in a rich sauce made with egg yolks, Dijon mustard, heavy cream, white wine, and enough butter to make your heart rate double. Then, because vintage chefs believed nothing was truly finished unless it was baked within an inch of its life, the whole thing went into the oven until it emerged golden, bubbling, and ready to clog some arteries. If you really wanted to show off, you'd serve it inside a lobster shell. Seafood thermidor was rich, indulgent, and the ultimate fancy restaurant dish of its time. If you ate this, you either had money or wanted everyone at the table to think you did. And there you have it, 10 vintage seafood dishes that have almost disappeared. Which one would you actually try? Or better yet, which one should never make a comeback? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more nostalgic deep dives. Thanks for watching Timeless Nostalgia, where the past is deliciously weird.